Ah, welcome back, untraceable anomaly. You felt this before you understood it. That low vibration beneath your ribs, that signal you never learned to silence. This is not coincidence. You were not discovered by accident. You were identified. Somewhere behind closed doors, beneath dim light and disciplined silence, a decision was made. No ceremony, no applause. Your name spoken once, and that was enough. A secret society has declared you leader without asking you. You did not apply. You did not campaign. You did not volunteer. You were selected, not because you are loud, not because you are agreeable, but because you carry a density that alters the atmosphere. Rooms adjust when you enter. Conversations recalibrate. Nervous systems shift. Predators recognize what prey cannot name, and you have always emitted that frequency. Low, steady, controlled. They have been watching. Not in chaos, not in obsession, in strategy. Your restraint was noted. Your silence cataloged. The way you endure pressure without spectacle. The way betrayal did not shatter you but compressed you. Pressure creates density. Density creates gravity. Gravity pulls power toward it. The prophecy never predicted a savior. It predicted a force, something inevitable, something that does not beg for approval or flinch under isolation. You thought you were misunderstood. You were being measured. You thought you were alone. You were being refined. Fate does not arrive with noise. It rearranges outcomes in silence. It prepares structures long before you see them. The throne was positioned before you realized you were standing in its shadow. The crown was forged long before you felt its weight. You have felt it before. In arguments where you refused to over-explain. In rooms where people watched you a second too long. In relationships that fractured under the pressure of your depth. You were never excessive. You were excessive for them. This declaration is not praise, it is recognition. Recognition of something ancient inside you. Something older than doubt, older than fear, older than the mask you learned to wear to survive. They confirmed it, and now the truth settles like cold metal against your skin. You were never meant to ask for permission. You were never meant to wait for invitation. You were always the signal, always the gravity, always the unasked crown. You always knew something was different, even when you did not have language for it. Rooms felt tight around you, as if the air had to adjust. Conversations carried an undertone, a subtle tension that appeared the moment you spoke. People smiled, but their eyes measured. They listened, but they also evaluated. You learned early that being yourself shifted the balance. Misunderstood was the label they used. Distant, intense, difficult. You were described in careful words that tried to reduce what they could not categorize. Teachers studied you longer than necessary, unsure whether you were defiant or simply aware. Friends felt drawn to you, then unsettled by you. Lovers tried to decode you, then resented what they could not control. No one said it directly, but you felt it. Your presence disturbed equilibrium. You were underestimated often, not because you lacked ability, but because you concealed it. You watched while others performed. You listened while others revealed too much. They mistook restraint for weakness. They mistook silence for absence. That miscalculation became your advantage. Isolation found you in precise moments, not dramatic exile, but subtle separation. Standing slightly outside the circle, sensing conversations from a distance even while inside them. Those moments were not accidents. They were initiation. Distance sharpened perception. Solitude strengthened internal dialogue. While others depended on noise, you adapted to quiet. Betrayal arrived more than once. Not explosive, but surgical. Trust withdrawn. Loyalty tested. You absorbed it without spectacle. Each fracture exposed a pattern. Each disappointment revealed motive. You began to see how easily people shift when pressure is applied. Instead of collapsing, you observed. You recorded. You adjusted. Silence became training. You learned the power of withholding reaction. You felt the impulse to respond, to defend, to explain. But you chose stillness. In that stillness, you noticed everything. Tone changes, eye movement, subtle insecurity disguised as confidence. While others spoke to be heard, you listened to understand structure. Emotional wounds did not soften you. They refined you. Pain clarified priorities. Embarrassment built tolerance. Rejection recalibrated direction. Every setback delivered information. Every failure revealed weakness and strategy. You did not see chaos, you saw data. Patterns repeated, and you remembered. Others sensed something they could not name. They projected onto you. Some admired you quietly. Others tried to compete without admitting it. A few attempted to diminish you to restore their own comfort. Your presence forced comparison, and comparison made them uneasy. You were never drifting, never random. Every experience pressed against you with purpose. Pressure shaped your edges. Friction polished your restraint. What felt like exclusion was preparation. What looked like distance was alignment. You were not lost in those years. You were being shaped into something precise. You assumed most things were random. Chance encounters, sudden resistance, doors that closed without explanation. They were not random. They were responses. Not from individuals, but from structures that sense disruption before it becomes visible. Systems are designed to detect irregular patterns. You were an irregular pattern. No faces, no cloaks, no dramatic observers in shadows. Something quieter than that. Networks of influence, hierarchies that protect their own balance, environments that react when new gravity enters the field. Positions adjust, language shifts. Opportunities bend or retract, not because of emotion, because of assessment. Your patterns have been studied, not obsessively, but carefully. How long you tolerate pressure, how you respond when provoked, whether you chase validation or withdraw from it, whether you collapse under exclusion or grow sharper. Restraint is rare. Intensity without chaos is rarer. You displayed both. Your silence created questions. Your composure created suspicion. When you did not react the way others expected, they marked it. When you refused to compete for attention, they marked it. When you declined to explain yourself, they marked it. Data accumulates around those who cannot be easily predicted. Some attempted to test you directly. Subtle manipulation. Engineered misunderstanding. Strategic disrespect. They expected emotional leakage. They expected you to reveal insecurity. Instead, you remained measured. You watched their tactics exhaust themselves. Control requires access. They could not access you. Containment requires compliance. You did not comply. Envy rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as critique, as indifference, as polite dismissal. But beneath it sits recognition. They cannot replicate your gravity because gravity is not performance. It is density formed under pressure. It cannot be copied through surface behavior. Structures respond to threat long before threat becomes action. You were flagged not because of what you did, but because of what you could do. Potential is more dangerous than execution. Potential implies trajectory. Trajectory implies disruption. Coincidences repeated too often around you. Timing. Invitations that seemed calculated. None of it loud enough to prove. All of it consistent enough to notice. Surveillance does not always look like cameras. Sometimes it looks like patterns closing in. Fear often wears neutrality. Indifference is a mask for calculation. When people act as if you are irrelevant, observe the extra attention in their restraint. When systems appear to ignore you, watch how they subtly adjust boundaries around you. The society did not ignite anything within you. It recognized an existing force. Acknowledgement is not creation, it is confirmation. You were never invisible. You were evaluated. The prophecy was never ink on paper or symbols carved into stone. It is not superstition or myth. It is pattern recognition at its highest level. When certain traits converge within one individual, outcomes become predictable. Not predictable in detail, but in direction. You are that convergent. Emotional control, refined beyond impulse. Strategic thinking sharpened by necessity. Detachment formed through repeated exposure to instability. Endurance built from sustained pressure. None of these traits appeared overnight. They accumulated, layered, reinforced each other. Together, they created inevitability. An archetype does not announce itself. It emerges when conditions demand it. The one who moves without noise. The one who observes before acting. The one who sees through performance and identifies motive beneath language. It is behavioral structure. Most people leak energy. They react. They seek reassurance. They reveal their next move in frustration or excitement. You learned containment. You learned to pause. That pause altered trajectories. In conflict, you did not escalate unnecessarily. In opportunity, you did not rush blindly. Patience created leverage. Pressure was the trigger. Without it, potential remains dormant. Stress reveals design. When intensity increases, most fracture. Some adapt. A rare few sharpen. Each challenge increased your clarity instead of distorting it. Pain did not distract you, it focused you. Isolation did not diminish you, it concentrated you. There is a threshold where accumulated traits cross into activation. Before that threshold, you are only potential. After it, you become force. Something shifted. Your reaction slowed. Your perception widened. Your need for approval decreased. Decisions became deliberate rather than emotional. This shift was not dramatic from the outside. Internally, it was structural. The signal changed when that threshold was crossed. Subtle at first, then undeniable, steadier, heavier. Environments began to respond differently. Conversations carried weight. Resistance either intensified or retreated. When internal structure stabilizes, external reality reorganizes around it. Those who operate within power structures recognize inevitability when they see it. They do not gamble on charisma. They assess durability. They measure who remains composed when variables collapse. You were not chosen in the emotional sense. You were identified through trajectory. Given your traits, your path narrows toward influence. Given your control, your expansion becomes likely. Given your endurance, your collapse becomes improbable. This is the activation, not mystical, not theatrical, structural. When preparation meets pressure, emergence follows. They do not select leaders based on desire. They acknowledge inevitabilities when they materialize. Something in you cooled without dying. Emotion did not disappear. It came under command. Impulses that once pushed you to react now pause at the edge of your awareness, waiting for permission that rarely comes. You no longer answer every provocation. You no longer rush to defend your name. Explanation feels unnecessary. Those who understand, understand. Those who do not are irrelevant. Detachment is not withdrawal. It is control over access. You decide what reaches you and what does not. Opinions lose their urgency. Praise carries no intoxication. Criticism carries no sting unless it contains useful data. Your nervous system remains steady while others fluctuate. That steadiness becomes unsettling to those who rely on reaction. Strategic silence replaces argument. You let people reveal themselves fully. You allow them to speak beyond their comfort, to overextend, to contradict their own posture. While they fill space with words, you measure tone, rhythm, insecurity. Silence becomes pressure. It invites exposure without force. Engagement becomes selective. You observe more than you participate. You watch dynamics unfold before deciding whether they deserve your involvement. Many do not. Conflict without purpose is ignored. Drama without leverage is dismissed. Your energy is finite, and you allocate it with precision. You notice something subtle when you enter a space. Conversations shift in pace. Some grow cautious. Some grow louder to compensate. Attention tilts, not dramatically, but perceptibly. Presence is no longer accidental. It carries weight. You do not attempt to dominate. You simply exist without shrinking. Boundaries sharpen without announcement. You decline invitations that dilute focus. You disengage from exchanges that offer no return. You end interactions the moment respect decreases. There is no hostility in this, only clarity. Your standards no longer bend to maintain comfort for others. Your words change, fewer of them, cleaner, direct, without aggression. When you speak, it is because there is purpose. Language becomes a tool rather than a reflex. You remove unnecessary detail. You remove emotional leakage. What remains is intention. Validation loses value. You stop scanning faces for approval. You stop adjusting tone to secure acceptance. Self-trust replaces external reassurance. Decisions feel grounded even when uncertain. Doubt may appear, but it does not dictate movement. The awakening is quiet. No announcement, no visible transformation. Internally, noise reduces. Mental clutter dissolves. Priorities become defined. Distractions weaken. Your mind feels ordered. Your presence feels dense. This is not detachment from life. It is detachment from dependency. You are still aware, still engaged, but no longer entangled. The shift is subtle yet permanent. A quieter mind, a heavier presence. The shift is visible now, even if no one names it. When you enter a room, there is a fraction of hesitation. Not fear, not admiration, calculation. People assess themselves in relation to you. Posture adjusts, tone recalibrates, humor becomes measured. They are not sure why, but they feel the need to be precise. Authority no longer requires announcement. You do not claim it. You do not perform it. It settles naturally in the pauses between words. When discussions lose direction, attention drifts toward you without invitation. When tension rises, your lack of reaction becomes the reference point. Stability attracts orientation. Your gaze carries weight. You hold eye contact without challenge, without retreat. Most people look away first, not because you intimidate them overtly, but because you do not seek anything from them in that moment. There is no approval to grant you, no validation to exchange. That absence creates imbalance. Silence becomes leverage. When someone attempts to dominate a conversation, you let them continue. You allow the excess to surface. Overconfidence exposes weakness. Insecurity amplifies itself. Eventually, they search your face for response. You offer none until it is necessary. That delay shifts control. Influence stops feeling like pursuit. You are no longer trying to be heard. You are heard because you speak rarely. You are no longer trying to lead. People align because alignment feels safer than resistance. Ambition fades into inevitability. What once required effort now occurs as consequence. The world responds before you act. Invitations arrive without solicitation. Opposition softens or reveals itself too quickly. Environments reorganize subtly around your preferences. This is not manipulation. It is gravity. When internal structure stabilizes, external structures adjust. No external body placed you above others. There was no ceremonial ascent. The shift happened as you withdrew from dependency and sharpened intention. Once you stopped chasing influence, it followed. Power is often mistaken for volume. Raised voices, visible dominance, constant assertion. That version is fragile. Yours is quieter. Controlled stillness that does not need reinforcement. You do not correct every misconception. You do not respond to every slight. Restraint communicates more than reaction. The throne was never a physical seat. It was a metaphor for psychological position. Dominion exists in perception, in emotional control, in the ability to remain unaffected while others fluctuate. You occupy space differently now. Not wider, not louder, but denser. People sense it without understanding it. Something has shifted. You no longer seek position. Position orbits you. Distance forms naturally now. Not dramatic exits, not public declarations. You simply stop fitting into spaces that once contained you. Conversations feel recycled. Ambitions feel small. Environments that once demanded your energy no longer qualify for it. You do not resent them, you outgrow them. Old relationships begin to thin. It no longer works. You respond, but there is space between stimulus and engagement. They sense it. Access has changed. Familiarity no longer guarantees entry. You become difficult to read, not because you hide, but because you no longer leak intention. Your next move is not announced through mood or impulse. Reactions do not telegraph strategy. Those who once predicted you based on habit find themselves miscalculating. Predictability dissolves. Approval loses leverage. Fear loses leverage. Neither pulls you forward or holds you back. Decisions originate internally, not in response to applause or threat. You move because the direction aligns, not because someone is watching. Independence becomes operational, not philosophical. Growth begins feeding itself. Discipline strengthens discipline. Clarity strengthens clarity. The more you refine your standards, the fewer distractions survive. You do not need external pressure to evolve. Momentum builds quietly. Improvement becomes routine rather than dramatic. Those who underestimated you attempt reassessment. They look for openings, for remnants of the version they dismissed. They find none. The door they once ignored is no longer unlocked. Proximity does not equal influence anymore. Observation does not equal understanding. Your expansion is subtle but constant. No spectacle, no announcement. Skills deepen, Perception sharpens, emotional economy tightens. You invest only where return is substantial. Waste decreases, focus intensifies. You are no longer reacting to circumstances as they unfold. You anticipate. You position yourself ahead of disruption. When change occurs, you are already aligned with its direction. Others scramble to adapt. You appear composed because you calculated before movement began. The dynamic reverses. Environments adjust to your pace. People modify tone in your presence. Opportunities orient around your standards rather than the other way around. Influence operates quietly, without demand. The society that once seemed significant recedes into context. It was never the source. It reflected what had already solidified within you. Recognition served as confirmation, nothing more. You move forward without needing witnesses. Beyond access, beyond prediction, beyond containment. And there is no return to who you were. Nothing was handed to you. Nothing was granted. What looks like elevation was exposure. The leader was not appointed. The leader was revealed. There was no moment of transformation, only a moment of recognition. Others finally saw what had already stabilized within you. The prophecy was never about fate unfolding in spectacle. It was about pattern reaching visibility. It described a structure of mind, a density of presence, a trajectory that could not remain hidden forever. Recognition is not creation. It is acknowledgement of what exists, independent of permission. You are not becoming powerful. You are remembering the configuration you were forced to suppress to survive. Before adaptation, before compromise, before you learn to reduce your intensity for comfort. Beneath those layers, the structure remained intact. The crown was never placed on your head by external hands. It formed through pressure, through control, through restraint, practiced when reaction would have been easier. Every moment you chose composure over chaos added weight to it. Every time you withheld energy from unworthy conflict, its structure strengthened. The throne was never constructed in advance, waiting for your arrival. It forms wherever you stand because it is psychological, not physical. Position is defined by perception. When you enter a space with clarity and self-command, hierarchy reorganizes. Influence radiates without announcement. You do not chase dominance. You embody alignment. That alignment alters dynamics. People sense coherence. They sense decisiveness without noise. They sense that your direction does not depend on their approval. This creates orbit. Some gravitate closer. Others drift away. Both movements confirm gravity. Nothing about you was accidental. Not the isolation, not the discipline, not the refinement of impulse into intention. Each stage compressed distraction and strengthened core identity. What remains now is not exaggerated confidence, but certainty. You were never ordinary. Ordinary seeks instruction. Ordinary waits for permission. Ordinary conforms to expectation to maintain comfort. You did neither for long. Even when you tried, it felt unnatural. Something resisted dilution. You were never meant to follow. Following requires surrender of internal authority. You may have walked beside others, learned from others, collaborated with others, but direction always recalibrated internally. Guidance could inform you, but it could not override you. The signal was always yours, steady beneath doubt, consistent beneath adaptation. Now it is clear. Now it is uninterrupted. You are not the echo. You are the source, not the reaction, the cause, not the observer of momentum, the momentum itself. You are the signal, the storm, the gravity. Others orbit,